Hello, welcome to Türkiye Talks. Today we will be looking at what's happening in Libya, what the future holds for this country, which has been going through civil war and a lot of chaos since 2011. When the Arab Spring has started, there was a lot of expectation that those countries will go through a smooth transition to democracies, but the expectations did not come through actually. Today we will be looking at specifically Libya. And Silvia, welcome to join us today. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And Kadir will join us from Washington, D.C. Of course, today we will be asking you a lot of questions because there will be elections in Libya and there will be a meeting, a conference in Paris in a couple of days' time. Let's start with what's going on in Libya in general. What is the current picture that we should see?
Well, it's for sure time for elections in the sense that the country is gearing up for the 24th of December, where elections will eventually take place. I say eventually in the sense that, I mean, so far there's been a lot of uncertainty around whether elections will indeed be held. And I mean, the question is not so much whether elections will take place, because in the end, I think that they will take place at the end of December. But what will come after the elections, what kind of country we will have, what kind of divisions we will see after the elections. We have seen many divisions, many conflicts happening in the past few months, because although the situation on the ground in terms of the security and the conflict is quite stable and stabilized, despite the existence of some pockets of insecurity and violence here and there. What has emerged as the main fault line and division is whether between the forces, the political forces in particular, who are advocating for elections according to the rules set by the House of Representatives in the past weeks, and those forces, on the contrary, that contend that elections should not take place. Both forces, political forces, in the end would have an interest in postponing the elections and keeping the status quo as it is, because it allows many figures to continue to cultivate their power and to have a sort of zero-sum game competition between one another. But at the same time, the population of Libya has made firstly clear that elections are important, that they want to get rid of the political class, of the elites that have so far run the country. And of course, I refer in particular to the last few years, because if we consider the whole 10 years since the fall of Gaddafi, then it's of course a different story. But the problem is that these elections that will, in my view, in the end take place, because this dichotomy is a false dichotomy. The pro-elections and the against elections people is in a way, again, another way of projecting a division and dichotomy upon Libyan society and politics, which does not entirely reflect the whole complexity of the situation, because the real problem is what will happen next, what point of departure these elections will be, what kind of chaos they will leave the country with, because this is what we expect. There is a degree of fuzziness, there is a degree of lack of clear rules that seems to be almost embedded in the way elections have been envisaged, so as to allow this contestation to emerge. And the contestation that we will see after 24th of December will, of course, be, I mean, very poisoning for a country that has already undergone 10 years between conflict and instability and external interference and so on and so forth.
Well, thank you very much, Silvia. I think that's a very nice contextualization of the debates that we will continue to have. As you have said, there will be elections, and I think there is an argument that there is a lot of expectations from the elections, as if the elections are the miracle solution to the ongoing problems. What would be your response to those who would say that elections will be a premature development? Before that, there should be some sort of legal framework, there should be some sort of tacit, at least, understanding between the sides about the power sharing, etc., in order to have a smooth transition.
Well, a lot of time has been wasted in the past few months because we knew that the elections would be a kind of the culmination of this government of national unity that was sworn in on the 15th of March in 2021, exactly with the task of leading the country to elections. So there was this ultimate goal set from the very beginning. And preparations for elections, in which in a country like Libya would entail not just issues such as registration or free campaigning for the candidates, but also really training people as to how to perform a vote in a free and secure environment. This preparation has not taken place because the government of Abdelhamid Beiba has actually pursued its own interests and has continued to behave as if elections, would be held in any case, but with no preparation, with no efforts to really use this preparatory phase to prepare the country and to transition the country towards the next phase. We have heard and learned quite recently that the Prime Minister himself wants to run for elections as a presidential candidate, and this runs counter to the main pillar of the government of national unity mission, which was to dissolve once elections would have taken place, which creates a lot of problems. At the same time, this does not apply only to the governmental figures, but all the elites and political figures that in one way or another have continued to behave as if elections were just a marginal part of the story of a contemporary history of Libya. As you said, there is a lot of expectation by the population itself that demands elections to take place. It's not premature, but unfortunately the preparatory phase has not been conducted successfully. Even the electoral framework that was voted by the House of Representatives through the electoral decrees, which are not even laws, does not allow the country to have a safe, secure and ordered management of the elections. Of course, there are different degrees to which we can aspire to have free and ordered elections, but in the case of Libya, we expect a lot of chaos, and the fact that ultimately the electoral process will be run by the security forces, because these are the only institution that is able to maintain order in the country.
Okay, thank you very much. Kadir, I'll just make one comment and then you can take over, okay? You're right, the recent elections, almost all over the world, I think, especially in the Middle Eastern context, in the African context, there is less and less, I think, confidence in elections. If you look at the last elections in Iraq, for example, the participation rate is very small. I think one should also look at how people demand elections on the one hand, but to what extent they really participate on the other hand. I think that's also a question. But Kadir, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question was going to be related to what Professor Küçükcan just mentioned. What I read was about 2.8 million registered in a 7 million, population country. That's a good number. However, I saw a lot of criticism about no candidate is actually able to run a national campaign because, different parts of the country is controlled by different groups, military groups. Haftar is, still controlling the east. He's shown some, I guess, he was important in the lifting of some, bans on oil exports and stuff like that. He's agreed to this these elections, but at the same time, he's running, as far as I know, and Gaddafi's son is running. So I'm not sure. Can you talk maybe a bit more about, you know, I think it's a good thing overall, to be honest, than the fighting that took place for a while, these kind of back and forth. There's no fighting right now, and then there's some process, like you said. It's a very maybe flawed and, you know, convoluted and slow process, but nevertheless, there's no fighting. But at the same time, what should we really expect out of these elections for the country? Because, you know, as I said, no candidate is running nationally. So what kind of unity will this bring, really?
Well, first of all, I would like to say one comment, to make a comment about the nature of the elections themselves. I mean, the rules of the game have been twisted so much that although people were calling for parliamentary elections in order to be able to elect their representatives in the parliament, actually what we will have are presidential elections, because the system has been, this presidential system has been reinforced so much that the presidential elections will take place first, and then after a certain amount of days, we will have the new date announced for the parliamentary elections, which in itself, I mean, again, as you said, makes elections, transforms elections into a sort of fight among different factions that are aspiring for the seat of the president, but does not bring politics closer to the people, or does not allow people really to express and to choose their representatives, which will happen at a later stage if this takes place. And so in the end, we have a number of figures, some of which, as you mentioned, come from the recent and past history of Libya, that are contending power. Plus the fractures and the divisions, the physical divisions of the country that we have seen, with some attempts by these political figures to try to symbolically mend fences and create a national, kind of platform for campaigning. I mean, we have seen, for example, Prime Minister Beiba engaging quite, openly with the political figures from different parts of the country, and also different political ideas, in order to show that he is really the person and can compete. And can bring all Libyans together. But we know that the way in which he is doing that, for example, is by distributing, contracts and using in the end governmental resources, kind of dividing the pie among these political figures, which is not in itself something that Libya needs. I mean, Libya needs also an economic and financial sustainable policy that is not what the current elite has been doing in the way it is managed the state resources. Then you have, on the other hand, in the eastern part, all the institutional structure built by Khalifa Haftar, in particular the military investment authority, that has created the skeleton that represents the skeleton of the security apparatuses of the country, the Libyan National Army in particular, and remains in the hands of Khalifa Haftar and his closed circle. And so the division between all these institutions, and then the House of Representatives, the Presidential Council, the Prime Minister, points to the fact that it's not just a question of the West and the East, but the fact that these institutions, it's not clear what they represent. It not only in terms of the functions they have. We have seen, for example, the recent spat between the Presidential Council and the Prime Minister regarding Foreign Minister Manhoush. We have seen how, again, international supporters, regional supporters have been drawn in again on one side or the other. And these institutions need really to much more clearly defined. Also because if the same architecture, institutional architecture, will have to continue also after the elections, I mean, we are expecting that more of these tensions will happen. For example, the role of the House of Representatives, which is overblown, in particular in the hands of his speaker, the speaker Hagila Saleh, means that, I mean, there will always be conflicts between the prime minister or the government and the House of Representatives, because they come from two different kind of blocks that do not just represent a physical division between the West and the East that still persists in the country, but also at the origins are a division of what the institutions should kind of what role they should perform in the architecture of the state of Libya. So there is a lot of work to be done, and clearly elections here can only but take a sort of a snapshot of Libya at the end of 2021. But then if we want we want this institutional framework to be sustainable and to continue and to perform its role, a lot of changes will have to be made.
Thank you, Silvia. I want to ask one more question, Hojam, if you allow me. So from what you're telling me, thank you for that really detailed sort of dynamics that's happening inside the country. What I'm getting from what you said is there is no clear path, to be honest, for national unity, and the emerging leadership. It's not clear whether they'll say, okay, I'm the elected new leader, and then there is no clear pathway towards achieving national unity among different groups and factions. But then I was going to ask you, you brought it yourself, you brought it up, the regional actors that are there and the West. There's this upcoming conference in Paris. So how do you think, because there's a lot at stake, this is an oil-rich country, so they can have incentives to make sure that there's some stability and go towards national unity, and I think it's going to take a long time. Because all these factions will resist melting into a national army anytime soon, I would guess. So how do you see the regional actors and the West's role in trying to get these factions, like shepherd them towards a national unity situation that is stable, and then you have actually more representative elections in the years ahead?
Well, I think that having national unity can only happen if you have stable institutions in place. I mean, you have to have a minimum of institutional framework that is based on firm rules in order to build this national unity in a country that has been in conflict for over a decade now, and has a very peculiar history, to say the least, when it comes to the pre-2011 period. I mean, we have seen that. I mean, elections that were held in 2012 and 2014 did represent a watershed in the recent history of Libya, but in a negative sense, because in the end, both in 2012, but more especially in 2014, they have opened the door to more conflicts. Because again, there was not a clear set of rules and no agreement about how these institutions should work and the relationship between one another. When it comes to the role of international community in particular and the regional players, I mean, I think that now the consensus for a while has been that elections will have to take place no matter what. This is so important. And if you speak to the Egyptians, if you have the Turkish, if you have the Emiratis, the French, the Italians, they would all tell you that it's time for elections, that this is so important, that this deadline is not missed. But the follow-up question, which is elections for what? And elections, I mean, in which context? and in which circumstances is sometimes missed. That's why you have, many initiatives that will likely intensify in the next few weeks in the run-up to the elections by, again, the French, the Italians, and the Germans that are co-convening this international conference in Paris that will open tomorrow. 12th of November. Then you have the Turkish, also, recent visit by the Beyba in Ankara, in Istanbul with President Erdogan. You have the Egyptians also gearing up when it comes to the 5+5 joint military committee, and the fact that there is now a sort of roadmap, a plan in order to clear the way of the foreign militias and the foreign fighters that are still present in the country, and the unification of the security forces, the creation of a proper Libyan army, and so on and so forth. And the Egyptians, again, want to see the elections because this would give them and this whole process the strength and the necessary kind of accountability in order to move forward also with this. I don't think that these external pressures will in the end change much when it comes to how the elections will be conducted and what will come after the elections in particular, because we have seen, in the past few years, always this, kind of two-level game. One thing is the regional international discourse and pressures and engagement with Libya, and a quite different thing has always been the national politics, the internal and local challenges that we have seen in terms of the stabilization of the country. Even, we have to give credit, of course, to the fact that also thanks to this external and the regional engagement, we have a permanent ceasefire that has been working pretty well. And now we are more than 1 year and over since it was reached. However, when it comes to the politics, it's quite a different story. And so I don't have great expectations when it comes to the conference, the international conference that is opening tomorrow on the 12th of November in France, in Paris, just for the simple reasons that this is more for the international community and particularly the European member states that are more involved on the Libyan dossier to show that they are doing something, that they are not diminishing their attention and focus on Libya, because there has always been many ups and downs when it comes to the extent to which the European Union and its member states have focused on the country. And there is this consciousness that Libya is too important for us, but at the same time there is not so much that we can do to make this process work.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Silvia. I have a question actually that bothers many people, I think, that regards to the issue of legitimacy of the actors that are involved in this crisis, I would say, or the tension, whatever we call it. If you look at from the UN, for example, perspective, there is a UN recognized government in Tripoli, but on the other hand, de facto, let's say, actors in the eastern part of the country. And I think this is something that we need to maybe address in this conversation, because if the UN recognized government or the authority is not recognized, it is interpreted that it is undermining the UN authority, actually. It is undermining the norms of the international community. How would you explain this dilemma? Because some of the countries that you mentioned, actually, they are supporting the international community, I mean. Some of them are openly supporting Haftar, and some are supporting, of course, UN-recognized government. How one can gap the breach and how this dilemma could be resolved?
Well, I think that this question made more sense, let's say, until a couple of years ago, or 1 year and ago and a half. Until the point when by the end of the military confrontation, basically between Haftar and the government of national accord of Fayez Sarraj, thanks to the Turkish military intervention, Actually, I mean, there is no countries on the international regional level that openly say and kind of side with Haftar. I mean, we know that there is that there are countries and forces that are keeping, I mean, Haftar alive, but the level of following that he has also in Libya, yeah, shouldn't be overestimated. What is more important is the way in which the eastern part of Libya has been completely hijacked by a way of doing business that is linked, for example, to the military apparatus, and that impedes or prevents other forms of business, of the economy to take place and to happen to the benefit of the population. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that in the end, the government of national unity that we have had for the past 8 months almost in Tripoli does represent the government of Libya. I mean, I was referring to the split, but it's not a split in the political realm as it used to be before, when Haftar was really, was really attempting to get power through the military use of military force. Now it's really all the forces, all the political figures are competing, you know, openly through the ballots, and this is what Haftar also intends to do, which on the one hand is very dangerous because it might end up giving credibility also to Haftar as a potential candidate, and it would also endanger the credibility of the whole electoral process, really, and this is due to the fact that, as I said before, that there are no clear rules and that the electoral decrees do not spell out and specify clear rules, and that there are so many ways of going around them that make the situation completely chaotic. On the other hand, having all political figures competing on the same level through the ballots is a huge step forward for Libya. This is for sure, because contrary to 2019 in April, when Haftar started his offensive, we have fortunately, luckily moved into politics now. I don't think Haftar has great chances of standing in the elections and becoming a president. But at the same time, the fact that he can continue and spoil the political game, I mean, this is a fair, there are fair chances that he can do that. But what is more troubling is what I was referring to is this split that is mostly visible in terms of really the economy and the way resources and the rents are used in the two sides of the country. I mean, the principles are the same. It's basically corruption and the favoring of clientelistic networks. But on the one hand, we have state resources in the western part. In the eastern part, we have this economy, parallel economy, which has become basically the economy of the whole Cyrenaica region, that is built on the military and the security apparatuses, investments and money coming from outside, in particular the United Arab Emirates, that have made money available for infrastructures work. And this is something that is again not very is quite poisoning for a country that suffers from this division, because this creates new possibilities for conflict in the future, because these are entrenched powers that will have quite a great deal of difficulty in letting their power go. Provided there is a clear institutional framework that can have the strength to initiate such a move. I don't see this happening in the short term, so probably Libya will continue to remain divided along different multiple institutions, and particularly at the economic level, it will remain trapped in this vicious circle of corruption and mismanagement of resources.
Kadir, do you have any question or comment? Otherwise, I will have more questions to Silvia.
Let me make an observation maybe, and then I'll hand it back over to you. It's interesting because, Haftar is playing this game now. He accepted to play the game politically, at the political level, like Silvia was saying. And from Silvia's comments, I'm also gathering that there's no guarantee that we won't go back to a military conflict situation. If you look at the past example, past election, post-election periods, I feel like this time it's a bit different because of the involvement of countries like Turkey. They created a stalemate, so there is not a lot of room for military victory. So I think Haftar saw that, and then it's better in the eyes of the Western community. Haftar is a U.S. citizen. He worked with CIA before. I think Americans may have told him, also. And there was some report that Kamala Harris, the vice president, was going to actually attend the Paris conference. That's interesting because, America wants to show up now, right? Biden's new foreign policy is to make sure that, it has better relationship with European allies, and it shows up to regional issues and global issues. Of course, what kind of a concrete proposal they can come up with, but it's nevertheless important, I think, that the US and Europe says, okay, we can't change a lot on the ground, but we are here, and we are sort of, if you play the political game according to the rules, we might be willing to allow you to participate, right, more in the international community. Because Haftar's other choice was to keep fighting and be, sanctioned, and then not being able to get the oil revenue and stuff like that. So I feel like this time around it might be a bit different for the political process, even though elections are very flawed, like Silvia described. It's nevertheless a political process, and hopefully they can build upon it. And then I feel like international community's involvement is going to be important, but still the Libyan actors will have to come up with that framework of national unity. That's just my observation. Hocam, you can take over here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You also made, I think, some comment on what I was going to ask Silvia about the role of the international community, whether we should expect some concrete results from the Paris conference, because Kamala Harris will be there, so that's a heavyweight in a sense. And if you look at the participants, I mean, they are all important countries. What would be your take on this, Silvia? What sort of outcomes you would expect? It is just a show, or really they are putting their heavy weight to find some sort of political settlement to the issue?
Well, no, it's indeed it's a crossroads for Libya, for better or for worse. These elections will not go unnoticed, and I feel that the international community recognizes that. However, I'm not sure whether organizing another international conference. We are less than 6 months from the Berlin II conference that took place in June this year, which, arguably did not achieve much except for, maintaining the status quo with regard to the permanent ceasefire, and kind of pushing a little bit for the preparation for the elections, which in the end did not happen very, very well, as I tried to articulate. So I don't think that such an international conference is the right tool to help Libya at the moment. I mean, there are other means through which the same kind of pressure and sensitivity towards the elections can be expressed. I mean, on concrete aspects, and I think that the path that has been opened now for the security sector reform with the 5+5 joint military committee is the place where the international community should exercise its pressure. Then there is the dossier of the migration, which is, of course, crucial for many member states. But again, until elections are held, the BEIBA has made clear that the country and the government is not in the position to take any commitments. And then, frankly speaking, Vice President Kamala Harris can be there. The French, the Italians, and the Germans will, of course, play the role of the hosts and to try to put together a sort of European unity around Libya, which does not exist in the end because it's still very much divided, but more than divided, it's a question of inaction and not real engagement. But the Russians, I mean, Putin will not be there. The Turkish President Erdogan will not be there, as far as I understood. And so with these two figures missing, it's clear that parallel processes will go on in any case, which we have already seen, moves around that. And in the end, all the pieces will remain quite detached from the reality on the ground. I know that for the current government is important, or Libyan government is important to have this kind of international endorsement about, the need to go for elections, to do the last push, in the next 1 month and a half. But in terms for the international community itself, I see that the process will not be so smooth. Also because there is not a plan, there is no plan for the aftermath of the elections, which is arguably the most important part after 24th of December.
Well, I think there is one remaining important issue as well, as far as Turkey and Italy are concerned, because you are from Italy and we are doing this program to also reflect some views from Turkey to the international community. You said in your speech that Turkey saved the Tripoli government by its intervention. What would have happened if Turkey did not do this? I mean, what sort of Libya we could have seen? Secondly, you said migration is one of the issues I think that is a common concern for the Mediterranean countries. To what extent Libya can be a ground on which Turkey and your country, Italy, and also maybe in the wider context, the European Union can cooperate?
Let me start from this last point. I don't see much appetite now at the level of the European Union to have to really think through a new strategy for migration, despite the declarations and despite what the European Commission has tried to push the member states to do. It's still too much a divisive issue internally in the European Union. We are also a post-pandemic situation. And I don't know, can you hear me?
It froze for a second. Maybe can you start from the beginning? They can cut this part out, I think.
Yes, I'm sorry. I got disconnected for a while. Yeah, we'll start again. Let me start from this second issue, which is the important issue of migration. I agree that there is a common interest by all Mediterranean countries and European Mediterranean member states in particular to deal with that. But I don't see much appetite within Europe and the European Union in particular now to work towards a new framework for migration, which also includes, a cooperation with the third parties such as Turkey. First of all, it's still a divisive issue internally, and we also are still very much taken by the, pandemic, kind of post-pandemic recovery, which is taking a lot of efforts. Both at the institutional level and EU institutions level and the member states. However, we are monitoring, particularly the Southern European member states, the situation attentively along the Central Mediterranean route, and we know that Libya remains a very, a crucial kind of hotspot, and that although now numbers are not so high in terms of the crossings, they could pick up again, and in any case, the situation is quite tense, both on the southern border of Europe, but also, as you can see from the news, in the eastern border of Europe. So also this geography of migration that is constantly shifting between the east and the southern of Europe does not help really Europe to address this issue in a clear and effective way. What Turkey and Italy could do together in order to contribute to this, I think that once the new president and the new government is in place in Libya, I think that then there will be really some opportunity to open the discussions around this migration dossier. And but in order to do that, I think that first we need to clarify what really Europe is prepared to do, what kind of instruments it has, which is just a question of containment, and so also giving the role of protecting the European borders to some third parties, as it has been the case with the EU-Turkey deal, or whether there are other instruments that are being tested now, such as to foster return migration, but also regular migrations across the Mediterranean that could be tested in the case of Libya, having a government with which this can be, of course, discussed and agreed upon. In general, I think that Libya represents really continues to represent a test for the foreign policy of the European Union, but the member states we know are very active, and when it comes to Italy, of course, we have a huge interest in seeing and ripening the fruits of the contacts and the long-lasting relationship we have had with Tripoli. And of course, when it comes to Italy, we see that this can be done also with some partners. I mean, we know that there are other countries that aspire to have an important role in Libya. One of them is Turkey, with which Italy is ready to work together in this respect, because Italy knows very well that without Turkey, coming to the first part of your question, the situation in Libya would be today completely different. Possibly we would have had a continuation of the military offensive by Haftar, and in particular the depletion of the resources of the country when it comes to the issue of oil, the boycotts and the freezing of oil that we saw in past years, that was very, very damaging for Italy and for its economy, mostly thanks to due to the role of ENI. So knowing what Turkey has done, has contributed in terms of bringing Libya back onto the political transition process, we are open, of course, and ready to work with Turkey. Also, I think that Turkey today is so much present in Libya. I mean, there are important agreements between Tripoli and Ankara that are just waiting again to be implemented fully with the new government. And I think that there is no way that Italy should close its door to a cooperation with Turkey. The important thing is really to speak between the two sides openly and transparently, because sometimes it seems that there is still a degree of competition and mistrust, which is not just between Italy and Turkey on the Mediterranean, but this also applies to Italy and other member states in its relationship to other member states in Europe. I think this is also the result of the difficult phase we all live in the post-pandemic world, and the fact that, again, bringing back the issue of the United States, the fact that the Mediterranean is more and more a European affair and not anymore a kind of an international affair or something in which the
Silvia, that opens a new debate, and I hope that we can do this some other time. If you can wrap up, very quickly, we will close the session.
No, I think that the fact that the US is, in any case, so detached from these dossiers show that, there is a lot more competition between the players that are here, close by to Libya, to the Mediterranean, and that are continuing to feel the challenges, to have to sustain the challenges that come from this region.
Well, Silvia Colombo, thank you very much, in fact, for joining us today, and also for having such a very comprehensive and detailed discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. Kadir, also, I would like to thank you for your comments and insights. Today, we come to the end of a new edition of Türkiye Talks, and hopefully we will see you some other time with a new program. We would like to say goodbye from us today. Have a nice time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.